Are you ready?
Audio
Welcome back to the internet's #1 favorite show. This is the BYB Insider, and I'm your host, the Big Guy. This week, special edition. It's going to be weeks 6 and 7 of the BYB season. Who won, who lost, you'll find out in this episode as well. And also, the debut of the Pyrotech Hot Seat. Our first guest, he is the owner of the Black Angels. Mr. Brian Basin will join us on the insanely expensive BYB Insider 5000. All this and more coming up. But first, let's jump into week 6. Here we go. And so as we dive into week 6, we got the Cobra Kai boys and the Monstars. Let's dive them inside the box scores, starting out with the Stars. Phillip Rivers, good game, 15 points. Brandon Marshall, great, 29, but Sean McGrath and Charles Johnson disappearing. Meanwhile, here's a shocker for the Kai. Jimmy Graham and J.J. Watt, perennial point scorers, falling off the face of the planet. And so the Cobra Kai's followed suit. 97-5 to 79. We're moving on. It's the Hail Mary versus the Black Angels. As we dive inside the box scores, Drew Brees, great game, 30-point game for Marshawn Lynch. The bottom part was mediocre, but no points from Bell and Amendola. As flip it over, there's Peyton Manning with kind of a small game, but the brothers Jackson and Vernon Davis comes to the rescue as the Angels buried the Hail Mary, 166.5 to 108. We're moving on. Boom, Jesco White and Charlie Brown's bunch as we dive inside the box scores. Great game for Tom Brady. Arian Foster, no Sean Moreno, huge game, 35, but the middle part for the Kick Me boys was a little soft. And flip it to the other side. Great games all around, but still trying to figure out how in the world Matthew Stafford got a .5. Anyway, it put the Boom Boys over. They take a 150.5 to 145. We're moving on. The Guild and the Prestige Worldwide. Inside the Guild scores, great looking scores, except the middle part was a little soft, and Andrew Luck, well, he disappeared. And it ends up hurting bad because nobody disappeared for Prestige except maybe Reggie Wayne on the IR. But Prestige takes this game anyhow, 115 to 96.5. We're moving on with the 3 and outs and the Mud Dogs. Here's the 3 and outs, bringing out some pretty mediocre kind of scores, but unfortunately, Tommy Quick had no answer as once again Chris Johnson disappeared. No defensive efforts whatsoever, and it ends up bringing down the Mud Dogs yet again. 104 to 90.5 as we go to the game of the week. The Workman family feud begins. It opens up with the UPS boys in the machine. Josh Workman up against Thomas Atkins. Let's dive in. Finally, Colin Kaepernick shows up with a game and Jamal Charles, but nobody else decided to show up. And flip it around to the other side, and well, it's kind of the same story here. Kind of rubbish. Matt Shaw barely gets by. But anyway, it ended up being a close game, and the UPS boys took them 95 to 92.5. Joining us this week on the Pyrotech Hot Seat, he is the owner and the general manager of the Black Angels, Mr. Brian Basin. And Brian, before we get started today, might I say, you are a good-looking young man. Man, how awesome are you? Well, thank you for that, big guy. Totally inaccurate, but nevertheless, it's appreciated. So this week you unveiled a brand new logo and, of course, a new look for your Angels. Is it a new day there, Madison? It is a big day for us at Baisden's Fantasy Sports Incorporated, as we've unveiled the new Black Angel logo and as well as our new looks for baseball and basketball. We just felt new city, new team. It's time for us to have a new image and, look forward to the future. This offseason, you and the Angels, of course, were a part of big news as your franchise relocated. Can you talk about some of the circumstances that led up to that? I guess, big guy, sometimes in life that you end up in situations that you really didn't want to be a part of, and things just happen. And, it's, I guess the word that I'm looking for is, it's really a sad situation. We never asked to be in the situation that we found ourselves in, but unfortunately that's just the way it is. And instead of dwelling on that, and it's unfortunate, but you got to move on into the future. So I believe that's what we at Baisden Fantasy Sports have done, and we're looking forward to that future. So new look, new city. So what's your outlook for the remaining BYB season? The season's not gone quite as well as we would hope. We've had some trying losses and some devastating injuries, but now our team looks like it's getting more healthier by the minute. Steven Jackson's back. So hopefully now that, we've been bit by the injury bug, hopefully we can avoid the injuries that some of our contemporaries have found themselves in, and we can push forward to our goal, which is to make the playoffs and maybe even get into that championship game and win our third championship. And that's Brian Baisden of the Black Angels. Brian, thanks for joining us. Thanks for having me, big guy. Be good. So moving on into week 7 of the BYB season, it looks like nobody was going to stop the Prestige Worldwide boys as they were on a rampage. But this week, they found themselves in a bit of a challenge. Would they come out to the other side? And who else would continue their winning ways? It's week 7. Let's find out. And as we dive into week 7, we start with the 3-and-outs and the Prestige Worldwide as we're in the box scores. Prestige continues to maneuver on, but unfortunately Reggie Wayne won't as he's gone for the year. But on the downside for the 3-and-outs, Jay Cutler died off and the rest of the team failed to show as they lose large. 136.5 to 82.5. We're moving on. It's the Hail Mary and the Machine, the annual father-son matchup as we dive inside the box scores. For the Machine, Doug Martin and Emmanuel Sanders. Where'd you go? On the flip side, Nick Foles and Brian Cushing died off, but Chandler Jones, 20.5 points, propelled the Marys up front and then gave them a victory. 114 to 85.5. We're moving on. The Mud Dogs on a big losing streak. Charlie Brown's gang. And unfortunately for Charlie Brown, Arian Foster died off and Tom Brady should have. As we flip it over, Aaron Rodgers and the running backs hold it in and the rest of the team hold on. And the Mud Dogs are off the schneid. 131 to 94.5. We got the Guild and the Cobra Kai's. For the Cobra Kai's, the top half was decent and the bottom half not so much. As we flip it over, Andrew Luck and the running backs and the wide receivers for the Guild pretty much put them over the top as they crushed the Cowboys. 134 to 94.5. We got Boone Jessica White and the Monstars as we dive inside the box scores, and poor Trent Richardson. The trade over to the Colts pretty much destroyed any fantasy value you have. But A.D. Lacy, A.J. Green, and Matt Stafford isn't suffering from those problems as they propel the Boom Boys ahead. 132.5 to 117. And now to our game of the week. It is the Black Angels, two-time former champions facing the defending world champion UPS. We're in the box scores. Matt Ryan Matthews, just great point totals, huge 36-point game from Calvin Johnson. As we flip it over for the Black Angels, Vincent Jackson with a huge game, but Deshaun Jackson and Michael Barkers refuse to help out, and it ends up costing the Angels large as they fall 149 to to 127.5.
So that's going to wrap up this week's episode of the BYB Insider. We thank you for joining us. Up next, weeks 8 and 9 of the BYB season. Who's going to push forward and on the road to Dina, and who's going to break down off the side in a cloud of steam? We'll find that out, as well as who's going to be our next guest on the hot seat. We'll definitely find that out and more. But for this episode, we're out of here. See you next time.